everyone, welcome back. I'm Pam and we're in my kitchen again. We're going to do some more baking. Before we do though, I wanted to tell you, I've had a lot of people ask me for some savory recipes, breakfast, lunch, rather than desserts. And I totally get that. I would like to do that and I am working on it. So in the next few weeks, I'm hoping to come up with some recipes that I think you would enjoy, that aren't too much work and that are more on the savory side rather than sweet. And for those of you who love dessert, I'm not going to stop doing desserts, but I just want to reach out to everybody. So today we're going to make a lemon yogurt cake. It is Garten'S recipe. She's also known as the Barefoot Contessa. She has beautiful cookbooks out, and each page has a shiny, glossy picture of what your recipe is supposed to look like. And I love cookbooks like that. I really like and appreciate being able to see what the finished product should look like. This is an easy recipe. It is light and summery. It's not too sweet. And you can do different things with it. So let's get started. Okay, so we've got a bowl and we have a sifter over it, and we're just going to add our flour, our baking powder, and our kosher salt. The recipe does call for kosher salt, and I would use it when it calls for it. Kosher salt is milder than regular salt. It's not so noticeable or salty in a recipe, if that makes sense. And I think it does, it's nice with some recipes to use kosher. I think she uses kosher all the time. Anyway, there, just do that. We're going to just get those dry ingredients mixed up. We're going to set that bowl aside. Our second bowl, we're going to add our sugar, our extra large eggs, and the recipe does call for extra large. So I will be honest with you, I've made it without extra large eggs, just done large. It was fine, but I do like to follow recipes to a T when I can. This is whole fat, plain yogurt. A little bit of vanilla, not too much. This is a lemon cake, not wanting to overpower it with vanilla, and some lemon zest. So we're going to take our whisk and mix this together. Break up those eggs. This recipe is all done by hand. You don't need a mixer, no fancy equipment. That's good. So that's mixed up. Before we mix the two together, I want to show you something. When you're zesting your lemons, this is actually a little cheese grater, but it works fine. It's not very sharp. If your kids are doing this recipe, I would recommend something like this. This is a microplane, and it's dangerous if you're not careful. You can see I have another Band-Aid. I'm always in a hurry when I'm doing things. I was out pruning yesterday and I nipped my finger, but I have scraped my knuckle on this type of thing a lot. So I really would suggest you be really careful if you're going to use a microplane, and if you've got, elementary age kids that are doing these recipes, have them use the grater, because this can really get you. Now, how you use this thing, and I've seen professionals use it two different ways. You hold the fruit, the lime, the lemon, the orange, whatever you're zesting, and you just scrape, and you can see where you've gone, and you just turn it. You do not want to get the white that's underneath the rind. That's pith, and it's bitter. So just scrape along. Now, this scares me. I do this very slowly when I do it this way. But when I just don't want to worry about it too much, about hurting myself or scraping my skin off, I do this with a piece of wax paper underneath or a plate or something. This works just as well. But this is a really great tool. Just be careful. As far as juicing for this recipe, your lemons, you're going to need either a lemon reamer, a citrus reamer, or just a little juicer. Nothing fancy. for any of this. And for this recipe, I'm using standard lemons. They're either Eureka or Lisbon. Some recipes will call for Meyer lemons, and they're milder, sweeter, the rind is smoother, the pulp is more orange, and they are really good, and sometimes you can interchange, but in this recipe I would stick with a standard lemon. So let's get back to our mixing. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our dry ingredients to the wet, and you can just dump them all in. And mix that up. Already smells nice and lemony. There's 3 different steps to this recipe. They're all simple. They all add a touch of lemon, which makes it really nice. Okay, so I've got this mixed in really well. Looks smooth. I'm gonna get rid of the whisk, and we're going to add our oil. Just pour it in, and we're gonna fold it in with a rubber spatula. We don't want to whisk it in, just want to fold it in. Your oil can be any kind of vegetable oil. Canola, sunflower, safflower, even olive oil. Yeah, you can see it's kind of oily, and we want to get those oily little lines all mixed in. Yeah, you can use olive oil in these recipes as well. I wouldn't recommend extra virgin in this recipe. It's pretty strong, but a light olive oil will work just fine. But probably whatever you have in your kitchen will be okay for this recipe. Just a flavorless oil is what you want. So I think I've got that pretty well mixed, and I've just folded it in, is what I've done. I'm gonna grab my pan. I love this pan. I got it at our local Ace Hardware. It's a USA pan, and it's got really straight sides. It's super heavy. It's kind of got a non-stick finish to it, even though you still have to, grease it. But it's just a nice pan, and the cake that comes out of it is attractive. The sides don't bow out a little bit like a lot of loaf pans do. By the way, I've preheated my oven before we started this recipe. That's important, and I've also prepared my pan. So what I did here was I traced a piece of parchment paper, laid it on the counter, set the pan down, took a pen, drew the lines around it, cut it out, sprayed the bottom, laid the parchment paper in the pan, then sprayed the inside of the pan. The recipe tells you to grease and flour using parchment, but I have found that the cooking sprays work really well. So if you want to grease and flour, you can, but this seems to work for me. So we're just gonna pour this in. And we're gonna bake it for about 50 minutes until the pick inserted right in the center of the cake comes out clean. So our cake is in the oven baking, and while that's happening, we are going to add our sugar and lemon juice to this pan, and we're going to turn the heat up. Whoops! Turn the heat up and mix it, and just stir it until the sugar is dissolved. We're not going to boil it. I mean, if it comes to a boil, it's fine, but by then it's done. All you want to do is dissolve the sugar. This is going to be a glaze. It's going to go over the baked cake. So when this dissolves, I will set it aside. I'll wait for the cake to come out, and we'll continue. Okay, so our cake has come out of the oven. It's cooled for 10 minutes in the pan, and now we are going to take it out of the pan. Just get something flat, like a spatula, and be real careful not to dig up the sides when you do this. The pan is still hot, so I like to take a towel and a pot holder this way. There we are. Now, that's pretty warm, but I think we can work with it. You can wait 5-10 minutes if you want to, or you can just go ahead. But this is our syrup. We just melted it on the stove until the sugar dissolved. And now we are going to pour this cooled syrup on the warm cake. A lot of it's going to run down the side and onto the pan. That's why I have a cookie sheet, or a jelly roll pan actually, because it has sides on it. That's the difference between the two. And a cooling rack underneath, because it's going to drip down there. Now, something that I like to do with this recipe is tip the cake and pour it on the sides as well. Just have to do it very carefully, so you don't want to crack your cake in half, you know. There, just a little bit. Set it back down, and we'll just finish off the syrup on top. Just do it slowly so it absorbs in. You know, I've seen some recipes, and this one does not call for this, and I totally understand why. Some recipes will tell you to poke holes all over the top of the cake so that the syrup goes in. But if you're not in a big hurry, it works fine, and then you have a prettier cake and you don't have a bunch of toothpick holes covering the top of your cake. So what we're going to do next is let this cake cool completely. And then we'll come back and we're going to add a glaze over it of lemon juice and powdered sugar. So when that cake cools down and it's not hot or even warm to the touch, we'll be back to do that. Okay, we are back and we're going to finish this recipe. The cake is cooled completely, and I want to show you something that I did do. With all that syrup that dripped in the bottom of my pan, I simply took the pan over to the sink and I poured the extra syrup on the cake. So it got everything that we made for it. I think last time I did this, I didn't think to do that. Anyway, so the cake's been baked. It's got a syrup on it of sugar and lemon juice, and now we are going to put a glaze on top of that. I know that all sounds really sweet, but the cake is not sweet, and this only really coats the top and the sides a little bit. So don't let that put you off trying the recipe. It's not overly sweet and it's really tasty. So we have powdered sugar and lemon juice. And we're just going to mix this up in the bowl by hand. Sometimes powdered sugar is a little bit lumpy, and if you want to sift it, that wouldn't be a bad idea, but I'm usually too lazy to do that, so I just mix it extra well. Sometimes after you've used your whisk, you can take your wooden spoon and kind of mash the back of the mixture against the bowl, and that'll flatten out any tiny little lumps. But I really don't see anything here. This is nice and clear and doesn't look lumpy at all. We'll find out, because I'm not going to take the extra step. So, I'm just going to pour this on slowly, cover the top. It will drip down the sides, and that's fine. That's kind of the look we're going for. So as you can see, this was not a difficult recipe at all. It's a little time consuming because there's steps to it. You know, you've got to let the cake cool, but any cake that you make, you've got to let cool before you can frost it. And then if you need to take a knife and just push some of this to cover evenly. Like I said, a little bit running down the sides is okay. You can actually help it. So that is our lemon yogurt cake. I hope you try it. This would be a great little cake to make and invite some friends over for coffee or tea, or maybe your next dinner party or backyard barbecue. If you slice it up, add some fresh fruit and a dollop of sweetened whipped cream, it would be a fabulous dessert. Let me know if you try it. See you next time. Bye.